For some amateur aviators, a fighter plane is the ultimate tycoon toy. But Ian Pringle wanted something much bigger and much deadlier. He wanted a nuclear bomber, the Buccaneer. Flying one of these definitely puts you in a class of your own.
I saw a Buccaneer parked in the hangar for sale, and I used to sit in the cockpit because as a kid I saw one of these Buccaneers do an air show, and I was very, very impressed with it. And I just thought, I'd love to fly this thing one day, never thinking it would happen.
Ian finally managed to buy one and transported it to Thunder City in South Africa, owned by friend and fellow flight fanatic Mike Beachy Head. He keeps it at Thunder City not only because of the fantastic engineering facilities, but because South Africa is one of the very few places in the world that will allow civilians to fly a nuclear bomber. Ian is not your average high flyer. He had a highly successful career in oil and was the youngest ever director on the board of Castrol. Now flying his nuclear bomber is his full-time hobby.
I've just retired from full-time work, so now I've got the choice to do what I want to do. I think it's important we all have a little passion somewhere.
And his passion is the Buccaneer. It can carry 4 1,000-pound bombs, Martel missiles, and air-to-surface missiles, or a single nuclear weapon. It entered service with the British Royal Navy in 1962 and has folding wings, so it can operate from both land and aircraft carriers.
Still got the nuclear selector or the Martel missile selector, the air-to-air Sidewinder missile selector. They're all still there. They're all still here in this aircraft. So it's fun twiddling with them some days, but they're not armed.
Having managed to get the plane to South Africa, the next hurdle was to learn to fly it and become only the second civilian ever to fly one. Ian had flown light aircraft before. He'd even flown the first private aircraft to gain clearance from Singapore to Vietnam. But this aircraft was in a different league. There are 174 switches and controls to learn and check for each flight, and no fly-by-wire computers to help him fly the plane.
I spend a lot of time in the cockpit, just in the hangar, going through emergency procedures, simulating all sorts of problems you could have in the cockpit. That also helps you get quite fast at identifying which things are where.
The next big challenge was his first solo flight. It's scary enough going behind the wheel of a car for the first time, but Ian was going to be piloting a 62,000-pound nuclear bomber at over 600 miles per hour. Unlike most planes, the instructor sits behind with no flight controls of any kind. It was all down to Ian. If he made a mistake, there was nothing the instructor could do to save them.
My biggest challenge was that my first flight was my first solo. I felt nervous, extremely nervous, almost thought of pulling out and not doing it.
Ian pulled himself together and took off.
I didn't think much more about it until I was roaring down the runway, and when we went gliding past Robben Island at 300 knots, I suddenly realized, well, this is great. I feel tremendous, liberated. I'm flying this thing, and then it dawned on me, well, we have to get it back on the ground again.
Ian managed to land his bomber smoothly, and he is now one of only 2 civilian pilots ever to fly the Buccaneer.
Flying this aircraft is superb. It's got enormous power. It's got a forward-tilted cockpit, so your visibility for low-level flying is absolutely superb.
Because the Buccaneer was designed to fly extremely low under enemy radar, drop its bombs, and then run for home, the pilots needed the excellent visibility. So it has a large canopy giving a nearly 180-degree view. To perform its mission without being detected, it would fly at 645 miles per hour, sometimes only 30 feet above the surface. For Ian, the Buccaneer gives him the thrill executive toys like sports cars just can't deliver.
flying jets, of course, is the speed and the way you can throw the aircraft around and do massive height climbs, do low-level flying in the Buccaneer. That's superb. And I think just the buzz of getting around the sky so fast.
And there's the additional buzz that any mistake could be fatal.
The chances are high if you're not concentrating, of selecting the wrong thing and suddenly falling out of the sky and killing yourself.
Even though this nuclear strike plane is 35 years old, it gives Ian the adrenaline rush he craves.
This aircraft still today outperforms a lot of frontline aircraft you have in the Air Forces. It's a fantastic aircraft. It's a challenge. And the more I fly it, the more I love it.
But there is one plane that is an even greater challenge than the Buccaneer.